the Darned is allegedly a sequel to Interview with the Vampire, the actual good movie based on one of Anne Rice's Vampire Chronicles books. Whenever I do videos suggesting improvements for a movie, if it has source material, I almost certainly haven't read it. I'm only here to suggest ways the movie could have been better on its own, not ways it could have been more faithful to the books. I don't care if Armand has red hair in the books and dark hair in the movie. That could not matter less to me. This movie has bad boy vampire Lestat awoken from his slumber by a rock band, and he joins them, propelling them to heights of popularity in between scenes. His music eventually awakens Akasha, the titular queen of the Darn. She probably has some interesting and complex Okay, I already rushed past the most interesting part of this movie about as quickly as the movie did. I wish the movie could have just been Lestat and the band. Do a rags to riches story about their rise to the top, and their lead singer just happens to be a vampire. That would have been about 300 times more interesting than the 3 or 4 plots this movie tried to cram into less than 2 hours. Lestat tells the world he's a vampire for some reason, which prompts other vampires to try to kill him for some reason. There's also a lady, part of a secret society that keeps tabs on the paranormal for some reason. She wants to be a vampire for some reason. Coincidentally, her aunt is also a vampire who gets involved in the plot near the end. There's also Akasha, the oldest vampire in the world. Lestat's music wakes her up somehow, and she wants to take over the world for some reason. On top of all of that, we get flashbacks to Lestat when he was a young vampire for some reason. One of the problems with this movie is you've got 3 or 4 things happening, and a lot of times I'm left wondering why all of this is happening. After Lestat becomes a world-famous rock star, he tells the world he's a vampire, something that, based on the response from his fellow vampires, I believe has never happened before. They tried to kill Lestat during his concert in front of the huge group of humans. Why does Lestat tell the world he's a vampire? Is he world weary and he wants someone to kill him? I've seen Interview with the Vampire a few times, and you could not convince me Lestat would do something like that in that movie. He seemed to crave all the dangerous stuff life could throw at him. But the events of this movie are over a century after the majority of that movie, so maybe he's changed. He's seen modernity, he hates it, he wishes he was dead. Seems like there's an easier way, like go out in broad daylight, but I'm not here to tell you your business. But wait, Google tells me that's not what's going on. In the books, he comes out so that he and the other vampires can join forces to discover the mystery of their existence. Would have been nice if the movie made that clear, as Lestat's actions kick off everything that happens. If I'm already confused by the inciting incident, that's not great. Why do these vampires want to kill Lestat, especially in such a public fashion? Are they upset humans now know vampires are real? I'm not even sure humans do know. After Lestat comes out, some ladies want to bang him, but he decides to feed on them, and they seem surprised at the vampire stuff. This and the incredulity at the press conference when Lestat tells the world what he is, I assumed all the humans took this as a big joke. If the vampires fear their lives are over and humans will come after them, that doesn't seem like much of an issue. And don't you think publicly flying and murdering Lestat in a very vampiric way would be a much more expeditious way of exposing yourselves? Or maybe that's not what's going on. Interview with the Vampire had a sort of vampire council led by Antonio Banderas. When he believes Kirsten Dunst killed Lestat, they kill her. Even for a vampire, there's certain laws that need to be followed. So maybe Lestat broke the vampire code, and now he must pay. But again, their own actions are much worse than Lestat's words, so it seems most of the vampires can chill on this one. There's a human lady, part of a secret society who knows about vampires, and they do, I'll be honest, I don't even think the movie knows what their objectives are. The internet says their mission is to study weird stuff, but the movie says they're not supposed to intervene. This reminds me of The Highlander. You had the Watchers. They were supposed to inconspicuously spy on the Immortals. But what are you doing with this information? If you're not supposed to interfere, it just seems like a waste of time. She wants to be a vampire, and coincidentally, when she has flashbacks about her aunt who went missing when she was a kid, it seems she was a vampire who is part of this, I guess, vampiric council who wants to oppose Akasha for some reason. Seeking world domination is the most boring and cliched villain motivation, and like most of this movie, it doesn't make sense. I mean, have you seen this place? Why would you want to be in charge? If you have some kind of hypnosis power, which the WWW tells me Akasha does, why not use that and you can be living on Easy Street for the rest of your very long life. Drink whatever and whoever you want. Anyone tries to stop you, hypnotize them into forgetting what they know. Easy peasy lemon squeezy. But the movie needs conflict in the finale, so Akasha wants to rule the world, and these guys want to stop her. But why? Again, I had to investigate on the internet to find this out. In the book, Akasha wants to kill 90% of the men on the planet. That is actually a very good reason for there to be conflict between the vampires. Just as Spike was opposed to what Angelus did in Buffy Season 2, it makes sense that some vampires wouldn't want to see a substantial portion of their food supply go away. I can't help but feel a lot of the problems of this movie stem from the studio trying to combine two books into one movie. It's hard enough trying to get one book into one movie without trimming a lot of stuff, some of which might be crucial in understanding what's going on. But to try to put two books into one movie seems like you're inviting disaster on the story you're trying to tell. Producer Jorge Saralegui said The Vampire Lestat was too episodic to make into a movie, so this movie focuses mostly on the third book. Interview with the Vampire, the movie, felt episodic to me, while keeping a through line of Louis and how he changes through the events portrayed therein. Not sure why they couldn't do that with an adaptation of The Vampire Lestat. Or, if you're dead set against doing an adaptation of that book, then scrap all the stuff from that book, which, according to my research, really isn't that much. The flashback scenes with Lestat and Marius hail from The Vampire Lestat, while the rest of the movie comes from Queen of the Darn. Even though I haven't read the books, it does feel like they performed an emergency surgery to make the scenes from The Vampire Lestat fit into the plot of Queen of the Darn. In the flashback, Akasha is a statue for some reason, and Lestat bites her for some reason, waking her up. I sincerely have no idea what she was doing between the flashback and the present day, as his music wakes her up again in the present day. It seems they tried to force the Akasha stuff into the young Lestat subplot, so it would seem that subplot belongs in this movie about Akasha's return. But it's sloppy. Like I said, what was Akasha doing after Lestat bit her? Why didn't she try to kick off her world domination ploy then? If you remove the stuff about Lestat being turned into a vampire, the movie wouldn't lose much. It does tell us Lestat missed some of his humanity, but you could give us that in other ways throughout the rest of the movie. If you cut all this, it would give them more time to clear up some of my confusion about basic plot elements. Since it seems this movie and Interview with the Vampire took some major liberties with the source material, why not make another change? It's a big one, but I think it would help tie some of this together. Firestarter's aunt is apparently 6,000 years old and is from Egypt. Okay, guess who else is from Egypt? Akasha. What if, on top of not being okay with killing 90% of the men on the planet, this lady knows Akasha and knows she's bad news? I have to assume that's already present in the books. Why have two characters from the same time and place if you're not going to have them be connected in some way? My big change would be to make this lady be the one who vamped Lestat. This movie already takes liberties with Lestat's origin, as in the books, it was some guy named Magnus who sired him, while in this movie, it's Marius. If you're okay with making changes, let's connect some of these plot threads. Someone who knew Akasha and what she was capable of in another life would be opposed to her in the present day. And she knows Lestat. It makes sense he would get wrapped up in her fight with Akasha. Also, this would strengthen Lestat's relationship with Mighty Duck. She's distantly related to the woman who mentored Lestat, so once this lady turns into a statue, Lestat feels an obligation to take her niece under his wing, just as he was taken under her wing long ago. I guess you could do this without having her be the one who turns Lestat into a vampire. She could have known him a long time ago and calls on his aid now. But like I said, they're already changing stuff from the books, and this connects everything. Even before I looked into what stuff came from which book, Marius didn't really feel like he belonged in this story, so if you take him out, you could still do the same stuff this movie did without it feeling like a clustercuss. Honestly, this isn't as radical a change as I might have expected with how much I disliked this movie. Just tighten the narrative they were interested in telling, and I think it could have been maybe not great, but better. That's it for this time. Hope you guys like this one, and I'll be back with something else in the future. Have a good one.